Well, when we're suffering pain of any kind, whether it's physical or emotional, and the two are usually intertwined together. But when we want to be free of our pain, we want to find a way that works for it. And different systems of therapy have been very effective for different aspects of it. And some are more effective for one area and some for another. Like just to understand how much got programmed in early in our lives, psychoanalysis or Sigmund Freud helped us see that. But then later on we've learned that if we have our thoughts, that they're acts of creation themselves, because what I'm thinking, I'm really emanating and attracting more of that. And so the whole idea of cognitive therapy has emerged and helps with that area. And then we have a lot of traumas that really often began very early in childhood, because we form our personalities by age 5, they say. And then that programming influences everything we see and how we think about it and how we interpret it. And there are different tools for dealing with those too. We used to think that just talking about them was a help, and it helps somewhat, to some degree, in changing our thoughts about it. But a lot of those things are imprints in our survival brain, called the limbic system. And it doesn't take much. Anything that resembles the original pain just pushes the button and activates it, and pours out the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And when it pours that out, then it just makes us upset, like we're running from a tiger, trying to save our lives, even though it may not be that at all. But our interpretation of it is the meaning we give to it, and it affects our stress tremendously. And it means that we get stressed over and over again more easily, because anything that resembles it activates it again. So we need to learn what ways or tools are going to be most helpful for us to identify the problems, but also ways that we can deactivate that same information, so it's not running us and keeping us activated, but instead leads us toward feeling much more at peace and not having the stress disturbing our work or our health or our relationships or our parenting or whatever, or being as teachers, whatever. Because many people in leadership positions, whether bosses at work or teachers at school, do a lot to create stress more than creating a sense of confidence and peace and tranquility and a centeredness that people can use to be more helpful in their lives in terms of health, but also in their performances. Well, the different forms of psychotherapy, like I said, the original one was psychoanalysis, and that was a major contribution by Sigmund Freud, and then some variations on it like Carl Jung and some others. But and what was so valuable about it is we learned that our early programming in our lives, just stays with us and sets us up. And they tried to find some ways that were helpful, and the main way it helped was that you created a good long-term in-depth relationship where somebody was really hearing you and caring about you. And that was a very important aspect of the healing. But on the other hand, there are some parts that are missing in that too. Because if we have traumas that are programmed into our lives, maybe at age 2 or age 5 or whatever it is, sometimes even in the womb, we know that we used to think of the womb as the safest place to be, but now they plant a little camera in the womb and they find that the fetus reacts to everything that the mother's experiencing. And so even the fetus in the womb is already being affected by whether the mother's upset about something, or she's anxious about something, or having a fight with her husband. So all of these things go on. And so now we have come to realize that different forms of psychotherapy are very effective in creating different aspects of our problems. And we may need to draw from different ones for different problem areas. So to understand our deep history, psychoanalysis is really important. To really have an intimate connection with the therapist, psychoanalysis has been valuable for that. On the other hand, to change our thought systems, which create our world, as one scientist put it to me, our thoughts are constantly having an effect on all the cells in our bodies, what we attract, how people respond to us. Well, cognitive therapy helps us begin to get to that more. And then there are newer methods that are more helpful for dealing with traumas. And one of the original ones was a scientist out in California came up with it, because she found she felt relief after she'd been looking around at different things over a park as she was walking through. And she came up with the idea if the eyes are moving back and forth, left and right, it gets the two hemispheres of the brain to work better together. And that can be helpful for a lot of people to clear out stressful situations or traumas. And she called that EMDR, which was eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. Now that one has gotten a little more widely used around the country because, yes, it's more effective than just talking therapy, for reducing stress from traumas and the programming there. Then another psychologist out in California came up with another one. He'd gone to an acupuncturist to get some treatments himself, and he was fascinated to learn that there were energy meridians that ran through the body. And there are points where they're a little stronger. And he went away from that saying, God, we psychologists need to do this, but we can't stick needles in people. And so he came up with the idea that you could tap on these spots, these acupressure points. And then I found from that, yes, that's sometimes valuable to tap. And then there are sometimes it's useful just to place the fingers and say, I'm releasing all fear related to this trauma. Or I'm releasing all shame and guilt, or worry and obsessive concern, or whatever the emotions are in relation to what the situations are. And sometimes in doing that, that's more effective. And so what we're learning is that there are different approaches that are more effective for different problem areas and for different people. And it's useful when we can find the ones that we need most to get the quickest relief from our pain and our suffering, and not carry the old programs that keep us locked in and cause us to be attracted to people. Like we always say, we're all creatures of habit. Well, we'll pick a person who will behave critically as a mate because that's what my father did or what my mother did. And it's so familiar to me to have somebody be critical of me that I'm attracted to that kind of person as a mate. And then we get upset because then they're critical of us. But we don't see that we have helped attract that kind of person out of the old programming. But the good news is we no longer have to stay stuck in the old programs. And the good thing is that we can use two of these newer programmings to help get rid of those old ones that are getting replayed, or we can use the cognitive therapy for changing the belief systems that grew out of that and that make my life unhappy or make me more depressed or make me happy that way. And so, and on it goes. We can find the one that works best for me getting rid of the problems that are causing me the pain or causing me failure in my work or in my relationships. You know, I found myself that as I started to learn different therapies on top of the psychoanalysis that I was originally trained in, that it each helped people in different problem areas more and more. And so I expanded to include more and more forms of psychotherapy that work for changing beliefs, that work for changing childhood problems or childhood programmings that set up our lives, clear out traumas more effectively, reduce stress, reduce illnesses. In fact, stress, we now know, contributes to 80 to 90% of all physical symptoms, but it's not dealt with in traditional medicine that much. But if we can deal with these different traumas and different beliefs, different downloads from our parents, different systems of programming that we have, and use the different forms of psychotherapy that each one helps more for that problem area, that helps us reach peace and joy and health and good relationships and successes much faster and much deeper than if we just kind of limit ourselves to the limitations of just one approach. And I might add to that too that yes, I found a lot of interest in that because over several decades I've been teaching seminars to therapists widely all across the United States and quite a few other countries. And so I found people have been very responsive to that and realizing that they can increase their effectiveness by bringing these different systems together for different problems. Certainly if you'd like to learn more about these methods or these tools or the combinations of them and how they work, I'll be glad to talk with you about it. You could contact me by phone or by email, or you could call me and we could make an appointment or two and we could discuss it more in relation to your area, your issues, your problem areas, and what would be effective for you to do together. So I'd be happy to explore those things with you. I have people who want to come in person can see me in New York City or in Westport, Connecticut. Others may prefer to have session by Zoom or telephone or FaceTime or things like that. So that's possible too, especially during this coronavirus situation. So whatever works for you is I'm open to explore with you. But I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about what this therapy is like.